My sister left her husband with me temporarily 3 years ago. Now he's suing us both. The lawsuit papers slam onto my kitchen table hard enough to make my morning coffee jump in its mug. Owen stands across from me, breathing like he just finished a sprint, his hand still pressed flat against the documents he just threw down between us. The morning sun coming through the window behind him turns him into a dark silhouette, and I can't see his face clearly, but I don't need to. The air in the room has changed into something thick and dangerous. This is the man I've been cooking dinner for 3 nights a week. The man whose laundry I've been doing because the washer in the basement is closer to my room than his. The man I helped pick out a new winter coat for last month because his old one had a broken zipper. He's wearing that coat right now, and he just slammed legal documents onto my table with enough force to rattle the salt shaker. I can see the bold text from where I'm standing even though the pages are upside down. My name is on there. Nicole's name is on there. Owen's name is at the top. Plaintiff versus defendants. The coffee in my mug has stopped moving, but my hands haven't. Owen's voice comes out flat and cold, nothing like the way he sounds when we're watching detective shows on Friday nights or when he's telling me about his day at the engineering firm. He says his lawyer told him to deliver this in person, to make sure I understood the seriousness of the situation, to give me a chance to read it before the process server shows up at my office and embarrasses me in front of my colleagues. How considerate. How thoughtful of him. 3 years of shared grocery shopping and splitting utility bills and him helping me move furniture around when I redecorate. And this is how he delivers the news that he's suing me. I look down at the papers and certain phrases jump out even from this angle. Fraud, conspiracy, intentional infliction of emotional distress, unjust enrichment. The numbers at the bottom have a lot of zeros. More zeros than I've ever seen associated with my name in any context. My throat has gone completely dry and I can't swallow. Owen is still standing there with his hand on the papers like he's afraid I might try to destroy them if he moves. Like I'm the dangerous one in this kitchen right now. I force myself to pick up the top page and the paper feels expensive, heavier than normal paper, the kind with a watermark that costs extra. Owen's attorney has a downtown address in one of those glass buildings where parking costs $20 for the first hour. This isn't some small claims thing filed in anger that will disappear in a few weeks. This is real. This is the kind of lawsuit that requires depositions and discovery and court dates that get scheduled months in advance. I start reading the actual complaint, and my sister's name appears in almost every sentence. Nicole promised him the separation was temporary. Nicole told him she just needed 6 months to travel and clear her head. Nicole assured him their marriage wasn't over, just paused. Nicole said he should stay with me because hotel rooms were expensive and she didn't want him wasting their money. Nicole lied about all of it according to these legal documents, and I apparently helped her do it. The complaint claims I knowingly participated in a scheme to defraud Owen of his marital assets while keeping him trapped in a state of false hope. I knowingly participated. Those 2 words sit in my chest like stones. Owen moves to the window and stares out at the street where his car is parked next to mine in the driveway. The 2 vehicles sitting side by side like they have every morning for 3 years. He starts talking without looking at me, reciting facts like he's reading from a script his lawyer gave him. He paid me $1,100 a month for 36 months. That's $39,600 in rent alone. He contributed to groceries, utilities, internet, the new roof we split last summer when the old one started leaking. He helped me pay for the fence repair after that storm knocked down 2 panels. He bought a new couch for the living room because mine was falling apart, and he said he wanted to contribute to the household. He's been living here thinking it was temporary, thinking Nicole was coming back, thinking he was just waiting out a rough patch in his marriage. But according to the bank statements his lawyer subpoenaed last month, Nicole emptied their joint savings account 2 weeks after she left for London. She transferred funds from their shared investment account into one with only her name on it. She sold the rental property they bought together in Portland without telling him and kept all the proceeds. While Owen was paying me rent and waiting for his wife to come home, Nicole was systematically dismantling their financial life, and I never said a word. The smoke detector finally starts its piercing shriek because I completely forgot about the toast burning in the toaster. I move to silence it, but Owen's voice stops me cold. He says, I need to hear something before I do anything else, before I call Nicole or call a lawyer or try to make this go away with explanations. He pulls out his phone and starts playing a voice message, and I recognize my own voice coming through the speaker. It's from 8 months ago based on the date stamp. Owen had called me asking if I'd heard from Nicole because she wasn't responding to his texts, and her last postcard was from 6 weeks prior, and he was starting to worry. In the recording, I tell him not to stress, that Nicole is just being Nicole, that she's always been flaky about communication when she's traveling, that she'll surface when she's ready. I tell him to be patient. I tell him she still loves him. I tell him everything will work out if he just gives her time. My own voice saying these things makes me feel sick because I remember that conversation, and I remember believing what I was saying. I thought I was helping. I thought I was keeping Owen calm while Nicole figured out whatever she needed to figure out. But Owen's lawyer apparently thinks I was deliberately stringing him along, keeping him passive and compliant while my sister robbed him blind. The lawsuit is asking for $280,000 in compensatory damages, plus punitive damages to be determined at trial, plus all attorney fees and costs. Owen finally turns away from the window and looks directly at me for the first time since he slammed those papers down. His eyes are different now. Harder, like he's already seeing me as the defendant rather than the person who made him soup when he had the flu last winter. He says his lawyer told him I'm probably judgment-proof, that I don't have enough assets to actually pay what he's owed. But Nicole does. Nicole has the rental property money, the investment account, the savings she drained. Going after both of us means the lawyer can attach any transfers between us, any money Nicole might have given me, any assets we might have moved around to hide from him. Even if I didn't know what Nicole was doing, even if I genuinely thought I was helping family through a hard time, the law apparently doesn't care about my intentions. I provided the cover that let Nicole destroy their marriage and steal their joint assets. I'm liable. The toast smoke is filling the kitchen now, and the detector is still screaming, and Owen is still standing there watching me hold papers that could destroy my entire financial life. I finally shut off the smoke detector and pull the blackened toast from the toaster, my hands moving on autopilot while my brain tries to process what's happening. Owen is talking again, listing more evidence his lawyer has compiled. Text messages between Nicole and me where I supposedly encouraged her to stay away. Financial records showing transactions between our accounts. Emails where I allegedly helped her plan the asset transfers. I keep shaking my head because none of this is real. None of this is how it actually happened. But Owen has documents and recordings and bank statements that apparently tell a different story. He says I have 48 hours to get a lawyer before he files the official complaint with the court. He's giving me this courtesy because of our 3 years together. Because he still has some residual affection for me despite everything. How generous. How magnanimous of him to warn me before he destroys my credit and my savings and possibly my career. I ask him why he's doing this, and his face twists into something I don't recognize. He says Nicole stole 3 years of his life and $200,000 of his money, and I helped her do it. He wants what he's owed. He wants justice. He wants us both to pay. After Owen leaves for work, I stand in my kitchen surrounded by the smell of burnt toast and stare at the lawsuit papers spread across my table. I need to call Nicole immediately, but it's 3 a.m. in whatever European city she's currently occupying, and she won't answer anyway. My sister has always been terrible at communication, disappearing for weeks at a time, sending cryptic postcards with no return address, calling at random intervals when she feels like updating me on her adventures. I used to think it was charming, this free-spirited refusal to be tied down by normal conventions, like regular phone calls or consistent email responses. Now I'm wondering if it was something else entirely. I pick up my phone and try calling her anyway. Straight to voicemail like always. I leave a message telling her Owen is suing us both and she needs to call me back immediately. Then I open my laptop and start going through my email history, searching for every conversation Nicole and I had about Owen, about their marriage, about her trip that never ended. I need to understand what actually happened 3 years ago, because I'm starting to realize I might not know the truth. The emails tell a story I'd forgotten or maybe never paid attention to properly. 3 years and 2 months ago, Nicole wrote saying she needed to get away for a while, that things with Owen had gotten complicated, that she needed space to think. I wrote back asking what kind of complicated, and she never answered that specific question. She just said she was booking a flight to London to stay with her college roommate Melissa for 2 weeks, and could Owen maybe crash at my place while she was gone because she didn't want him alone in their apartment obsessing over her departure. I said yes without asking more questions because Nicole and I had always helped each other out. 2 weeks later, she emailed from London saying Melissa had invited her to Paris and could Owen stay with me a bit longer. Then it was Amsterdam, then Berlin, then Stockholm. Each email came with a new city and a new reason to extend the trip and a new request to let Owen keep staying at my place. I kept saying yes because she was my sister and what else was I supposed to do? But nowhere in these emails does Nicole ever actually promise Owen she's coming back. Nowhere does she say the marriage is intact or the separation is temporary. Those were assumptions Owen made, and I reinforced because I thought that's what was happening. I find the email where Nicole asked me to tell Owen she still loved him. It's from 7 months after she left, right around the time Owen was starting to panic about her extended absence. Nicole wrote saying Owen had been blowing up her phone with increasingly desperate messages, and could I please calm him down, tell him she just needed more time, reassure him that everything would be okay eventually. I did exactly what she asked. I told Owen that Nicole was going through something, but she still cared about him and he just needed to be patient. Now that conversation is evidence in a lawsuit claiming I conspired to defraud him. I keep scrolling through emails looking for the moment where Nicole officially decided the marriage was over, where she told me she was never coming back, where she made it clear this wasn't temporary. I can't find it. There's no single email that says the words, but there's a gradual shift in tone over the 3 years. Nicole stops mentioning Owen entirely. She stops asking how he's doing. Her messages become exclusively about her travels, her new friends, the freedom she's discovered living without obligations. Somewhere in those 3 years, she left her marriage behind without ever formally announcing it, and I apparently missed all the signs. My phone rings at noon, and it's a number I don't recognize with a 503 area code. I answer, and a woman's voice asks if I'm speaking to Jenna Kowalski. I confirm, and she introduces herself as Leslie Brennan, Owen's attorney. My entire body goes cold. She says she wanted to reach out personally before the lawsuit becomes public, to see if we can resolve this matter without protracted litigation. Her voice is smooth and professional, the kind of practice tone that probably costs $300 an hour. She says Owen has been very patient for 3 years, living in limbo while my sister made off with marital assets, and now he simply wants what he's owed. She suggests I might want to encourage Nicole to settle, to return the funds she took plus compensation for Owen's suffering, and we can make this whole situation disappear quietly. Otherwise, she says, this will go to court and become part of the public record, and wouldn't that be embarrassing for everyone involved? I ask her how much Owen wants, and she says $450,000. That number is significantly higher than what was in the lawsuit papers this morning. I point this out and Leslie laughs, and says the lawsuit asks for $280,000, but that's just the documented financial damages. The $450,000 includes pain and suffering and loss of consortium and emotional distress. She says it's actually quite reasonable given what Nicole put Owen through. I tell Leslie I need to talk to my own attorney before discussing any settlement, and she says of course she expected that, but I should know that Owen has been documenting everything for months. He has recordings, photographs, financial records, witness statements. He has proof that Nicole emptied accounts, sold property, and transferred assets without Owen's knowledge or consent. He has evidence that I knew about at least some of these actions and said nothing. If this goes to trial, Leslie says in that same smooth voice, a jury will see a devoted husband betrayed by his wife and her sister, a man who paid rent for 3 years while waiting for a marriage that was already dead, a victim of an elaborate deception. I ask what happens if Nicole doesn't have $450,000, and Leslie says then they'll attach whatever assets she does have, and mine too, and we'll both be paying this off for years. She gives me 72 hours to discuss settlement with Nicole before she files additional motions. Then she hangs up and I'm standing in my living room holding my phone and trying to breathe normally. Owen walks in the front door at that exact moment, home from work early, and asks if I've talked to Nicole yet. His voice is casual, friendly almost, like he didn't just have his lawyer threaten to financially destroy me. I stare at him and something finally clicks into place in my brain. I ask Owen why his lawyer's number has a Portland area code when he told me his attorney was downtown. He freezes halfway through taking off his coat. I ask him why the lawsuit papers say the law firm is Brennan and Associates, but his lawyer introduced herself as Leslie Brennan. And isn't that a strange coincidence that she has the same last name? Owen's face does something complicated, a flash of anger or maybe panic before it settles back into neutral. He says Leslie is his sister, she's been practicing family law for 12 years. He hired her because family helps family, and she's giving him a discount on her fees. This is the first time in 3 years that Owen has mentioned having a sister. I've met his parents twice, at their anniversary party, and once when they visited for Thanksgiving. They never mentioned another child. Owen never mentioned siblings at all. I ask him directly if Leslie is actually his sister or if she's his sister the same way Nicole is supposedly coming back to their marriage. Owen's jaw tightens and he says I'm being paranoid, that the stress of the lawsuit is making me imagine conspiracies where none exist. But something is wrong here. Something has been wrong this entire time and I've been too trusting or too stupid to notice. I wait until Owen goes to his room and then I do what I should have done 3 years ago. I start actually investigating the man who's been living in my house. I pull up the Oregon State Bar website and search for Leslie Brennan. There are 3 attorneys with that name in the state. One is 72 years old and specializes in corporate law. One is 34 and works for legal aid. The third is 41 and does family law in Portland. I click on her profile and there's a photograph. The woman in the picture has dark hair and a professional smile and looks nothing like Owen. I search for any connection between Leslie Brennan and Owen Brennan and find nothing. No shared addresses, no family relationships listed, nothing. I search for Owen Brennan in the State Bar database thinking maybe he lied about being an engineer, maybe he's actually a lawyer himself, but there's no listing. Then I search for Owen Brennan in the public records database, and what I find makes my stomach drop. There are liens against his name. Multiple liens. A judgment from 2 years ago for $32,000. Another from 18 months ago for $48,000. These are not small parking tickets or minor civil matters. These are major financial judgments that Owen never mentioned while living in my house and paying me $1,100 a month in rent. I dig deeper and find more. Owen was sued by a former landlord for property damage and unpaid rent. He was sued by a credit card company for default. He was sued by a car dealership for failure to make payments. The pattern is clear once I know to look for it. Owen borrows money, makes promises, and then disappears when the bills come due. My phone buzzes with a text from Nicole, and my hands are shaking so hard I almost drop it. She says she just woke up to 17 missed calls from me, and what's the emergency? I call her immediately, and she answers on the second ring sounding groggy. I tell her Owen is suing us both for $450,000, and I need her to tell me the truth about what happened 3 years ago. There's a long silence, and then Nicole says something that changes everything. She says Owen never told me why she left, did he? I say no. He told me they were having marital problems and she needed space. Nicole laughs, but it's not a happy sound. She says Owen put her in the hospital. Those 6 words hang in the air between us, and I can't breathe. She says it happened 3 years and 3 months ago, that Owen shoved her during an argument and she fell and hit her head on their coffee table corner and woke up in the emergency room with a concussion and 7 stitches. Nicole keeps talking, and I keep listening, and my entire understanding of the past 3 years is collapsing. She says Owen was apologetic afterward, crying and begging forgiveness, promising it would never happen again, saying he'd been under stress at work and lost control for just a moment. She believed him because she loved him and because he seemed genuinely horrified by what he'd done. But then 2 months later, he grabbed her arm hard enough to leave bruises during another argument. And then a month after that, he punched a hole in the wall next to her head. Nicole realized she needed to leave, but she was terrified of what Owen would do if she announced she was divorcing him. So she told him she needed a temporary break to visit her friend in London, and could he stay with me while she was gone? She made it sound like a trial separation, something that might help their marriage, because she knew if Owen thought she was leaving permanently, he would escalate. She got on a plane to London and never came back because being an ocean away was the only way to feel safe. The rental property she sold was inherited from our grandmother and was in her name only, never joint with Owen. The investment account she emptied was funded entirely from her salary because Owen had been unemployed for 8 months before she left. She didn't steal anything. She took what was legally hers and ran. I asked Nicole why she never told me any of this, and she says she tried. She says in her first email from London, she hinted that things with Owen had gotten dangerous, that she needed space to heal, that she might not be coming back. I pull up that email again and read it more carefully. The words are there if I know to look for them. She says Owen had been getting intense, and she needed to feel safe again, and maybe some permanent distance would be healthy. I interpreted all of that as normal couples drama, the kind of vague relationship problems everyone has. I never imagined she meant actual violence. Nicole says she kept trying to tell me over the months, dropping hints about Owen's temper, mentioning therapy she'd started for trauma, suggesting that maybe Owen should find his own place. But I kept reassuring her that Owen seemed fine, that he was being very respectful, that he was clearly waiting patiently for her return. Nicole says every time I told her how well Owen was doing at my house, how helpful and considerate he was being, she felt more trapped. If she told me the truth about why she left, would I even believe her? Owen was so good at playing the abandoned husband that even I fell for it. She eventually stopped trying to tell me and just focused on staying alive and staying hidden. I'm still processing this when Owen knocks on my bedroom door. He's holding his laptop and he looks agitated. He says we need to talk about next steps, about whether I've managed to reach Nicole yet, about settlement negotiations. I tell him I just talked to Nicole and she told me why she actually left 3 years ago. Owen's expression shifts, and for a split second I see something ugly cross his face before he controls it. He says Nicole is a liar, that she's rewriting history to make herself look better, that none of what she claims ever happened. He says if he'd actually hurt her, there would be police reports or medical records or some kind of evidence. I point out that there probably are medical records from when she got a concussion and 7 stitches. Owen says she got those injuries from a fall, a clumsy accident, nothing to do with him. His voice is rising now and he's standing in my doorway blocking the exit, and I suddenly understand why Nicole ran. This is the Owen she knew. This is the version he kept hidden from me for 3 years. I tell him I want him out of my house. Tonight. He can pack his things and leave and find somewhere else to live while we sort out his fraudulent lawsuit. Owen's face goes red and he says I have no right to kick him out, that he's a tenant with legal protections, that I can't just arbitrarily evict him without proper notice. He's right about that, unfortunately. I need to go through formal eviction proceedings, which could take months. Owen's voice drops to something quieter and more dangerous. He says I've been very comfortable taking his rent money for 3 years, and now I'm choosing Nicole's lies over his truth. He says he has every right to sue for the money he's owed and the life Nicole stole from him. He says I'm going to regret taking her side when this goes to court and the judge sees all his evidence. Then he turns and walks back to his room and closes the door, and I hear the lock click. I sit on my bed with my phone in my hand and do something I should have done immediately. I call the police. I tell them I have a tenant who I've just learned has a history of violence, and I want to file a report about the threats he's making. The dispatcher asks if I'm in immediate danger, and I say no, but I'm scared. She says an officer will come by within the hour to take a statement, Then I call a locksmith and schedule him to come tomorrow to change all the locks on my bedroom door. Then I email Leslie Brennan's law office and tell them I know their lawsuit is fraudulent, that I know Owen was abusive to Nicole, that I know the money Nicole took was legally hers, and that if they proceed with this case, I will countersue for harassment and abusive process. I copy Nicole on the email so she knows I finally understand what really happened 3 years ago. The police officer who shows up 40 minutes later is a woman in her 30s named Officer Reeves, who has kind eyes and takes extensive notes. I tell her everything. About Nicole leaving, about Owen living here for 3 years, about the lawsuit, about what Nicole finally told me today. Officer Reeves asks if Owen has ever been physically threatening toward me, and I say no, not until today when he blocked my doorway and raised his voice. She writes this down and says, I need to start the formal eviction process immediately and document everything Owen does or says. She says based on what I've told her about Nicole's injuries, Nicole should file a police report, even though 3 years have passed. She gives me her card and tells me to call immediately if Owen escalates. After she leaves, I sit in my kitchen and stare at the lawsuit papers still spread across my table and realize they're not evidence of Owen's victimhood. They're evidence of his control. This lawsuit is Owen's way of punishing Nicole for escaping and punishing me for helping her even inadvertently. He's been planning this for months, carefully building a false narrative where he's the wounded party and we're the villains. He's been living in my house collecting evidence and recording conversations and preparing his case while I stupidly thought we were friends. I spend the next 3 days communicating with Nicole and a lawyer I hired who specializes in domestic violence cases. Her name is Patricia Cross, and she's exactly the kind of fierce advocate I need right now. Patricia listens to everything and then tells me Owen's lawsuit is likely sanctionable, meaning he and his attorney could be penalized for filing frivolous claims. She says the fact that Leslie Brennan isn't actually Owen's sister despite him claiming she is raises serious ethical questions. She says if Nicole provides her medical records from the hospital visit 3 years ago, we can establish a pattern of abuse that explains why Nicole fled. Patricia files a motion to dismiss Owen's lawsuit on grounds that it's frivolous and harassing and intended to continue stalking behavior. She includes declarations from both Nicole and me explaining the real circumstances of Nicole's departure. She attaches hospital records Nicole managed to obtain from London showing treatment for concussion and trauma. She includes the public records showing Owen's history of financial judgments and unpaid debts, establishing that he has a pattern of not meeting his obligations and then blaming others. The motion is 37 pages long and it systematically destroys every claim in Owen's complaint. Owen gets served with the motion to dismiss while we're both home on a Friday evening. The process server comes to the door and asks for Owen and hands him a thick envelope. Owen opens it right there in the entryway and I watch his face change as he reads. He looks up at me standing in the kitchen doorway and his eyes are full of rage. He says I'm going to pay for this, that I have no idea what I've started, that Patricia Cross is making claims she can't prove. I tell him actually we can prove everything because Nicole kept copies of all her medical records and all the text messages where Owen apologized for hurting her and promised to change. Owen's face goes pale and he says those texts don't exist, that I'm fabricating evidence now. But I can see in his expression that he knows exactly which texts I'm talking about. Nicole saved everything, every apology, every promise, every threat disguised as concern. Owen crumples the papers in his hand and throws them on the floor and storms to his room. I hear things breaking in there, the sound of furniture being shoved around. I retreat to my bedroom and lock the new deadbolt I had installed. I text Patricia that Owen is escalating and she responds immediately telling me to call 911 if he tries to enter my room or threatens me directly. The next morning, Owen is gone. His car is missing from the driveway, and when I carefully check his room, most of his belongings are still there, but his laptop and important papers are gone. I call Patricia and she says this is actually good news, that Owen fleeing suggests he knows his case is falling apart. 2 days later, Patricia gets a call from Leslie Brennan requesting a settlement conference. Apparently, Leslie has done her due diligence now and realized Owen lied to her about most of the facts in his case. Patricia agrees to a conference call and puts me on muted line so I can listen. Leslie starts by saying there's been some misunderstanding about the nature of Owen's claims, and perhaps they moved too hastily in filing. Patricia cuts her off and says there was no misunderstanding. Owen filed a fraudulent lawsuit to harass and stalk his ex-wife and dragged me into it despite knowing I had no involvement in any alleged wrongdoing. Leslie tries to backtrack and suggests they can all just walk away from this quietly, dismiss all claims with prejudice, everyone goes their separate ways. Patricia says absolutely not. She says we're pursuing sanctions against both Owen and Leslie's firm for filing frivolous claims, and she's reporting Leslie to the state bar for failing to properly vet her client's allegations. Leslie's voice gets defensive, and she says she relied on information provided by her client. Patricia says that's not an excuse, that attorneys have a duty to investigate before filing, and Leslie clearly didn't. The call ends badly with Leslie threatening to fight the sanctions motion, and Patricia saying, bring it on. 3 weeks later, we're in court for a hearing on our motion to dismiss, and Owen doesn't show up. His attorney Leslie appears alone and tells the judge that Owen has decided not to pursue his claims and requests that the case be dismissed. The judge asks why Owen isn't present, and Leslie says she doesn't know, that he's stopped responding to her calls. The judge looks annoyed and asks if Leslie properly investigated the domestic violence allegations before filing this lawsuit. Leslie stammers something about relying on client representations. The judge reviews Patricia's motion with its attached evidence and asks Leslie directly if she was aware that Owen had a documented history of violence against Nicole. Leslie admits she was not. The judge says that's a problem. He grants our motion to dismiss with prejudice and orders Owen to pay our attorney fees and costs. He also says he's referring this matter to the state bar for investigation into whether Leslie violated her professional responsibilities. Leslie's face goes white and she tries to argue, but the judge cuts her off. He says attorneys who file abusive litigation to facilitate stalking behavior deserve to be sanctioned. Case dismissed. Patricia and I walk out of the courtroom and she's smiling. She says that went better than expected. 2 months later, I get an email from Nicole with a photo attached. She's standing in front of a small cafe in Copenhagen with a man whose arm is around her waist. She looks happy, genuinely happy, in a way I haven't seen in years. The email says she's been seeing this man, Henrik, for 8 months, and they're talking about her staying in Denmark permanently. She says she finally feels safe enough to build a real life instead of just running. She thanks me for believing her when it mattered, for fighting back against Owen's lawsuit, for helping her stay free. She says our grandmother's rental property money has been sitting in an account untouched because she was too afraid to use it, worried Owen would somehow track it and come after her. Now she's using it to buy a stake in Henrik's cafe business. She's putting down roots. She's planning a future. And Owen can't touch any of it because his lawsuit died in that courtroom. I write back telling her I'm proud of her and I'm sorry I didn't understand sooner what she was running from. She responds saying I couldn't have known, that Owen is excellent at deception, that even she didn't see it coming until it was too late. Owen never collected his remaining belongings from my house. After 30 days, I legally disposed of everything per the abandonment laws. I found some interesting items going through his room before throwing it all out. A journal detailing his lawsuit strategy, including notes about recording conversations without consent and plans to manipulate me into giving testimony that would support his claims. Letters from creditors demanding payment on debts I never knew existed. An eviction notice from his landlord before he moved in with me, which means he lied about Nicole asking him to stay here temporarily. He was effectively homeless and used their separation as an excuse to move into my house rent-free at first, then gradually started paying partial rent to establish tenancy rights. The more I uncover about Owen, the more I understand that Nicole's escape wasn't dramatic. It was necessary. The man I thought I knew never existed. He was always a performance designed to manipulate sympathy and support while Nicole ran for her life. I was his cover story, the proof that he was a good guy abandoned by his cruel wife. And I played that role perfectly for 3 years because I trusted him and doubted her. The lawsuit was his final play to punish Nicole financially and emotionally when he could no longer control her physically. It failed because Nicole was brave enough to finally tell the truth, and I was smart enough to eventually listen. I changed all the locks on the house and installed a security system. I filed a restraining order against Owen that was granted based on his threatening behavior and the evidence of his abuse toward Nicole. He hasn't contacted me since fleeing after receiving our motion to dismiss. Patricia says he probably moved to a different state to escape his debts and the fallout from the failed lawsuit. Nicole video calls me once a week from Copenhagen and tells me about the cafe and Henrik and her new life. She says she sleeps through the night now without nightmares. She says she can walk down streets without constantly looking over her shoulder. The lawsuit that was supposed to destroy both of us ended up freeing her completely. Owen gambled that no one would believe Nicole's story about abuse, that his performance as the devoted abandoned husband was solid enough to withstand scrutiny. He was wrong. And now he's the one running and hiding while Nicole builds a life worth living. Justice doesn't always look the way you expect, but sometimes it comes anyway. Sharp and final and absolutely deserved. Appreciate you watching this far. If you enjoyed it, drop a like, leave a comment, and subscribe so you won't miss the next story.